All right, in part two of family sociology, bringing up baby, just to sort of follow up a wee bit, we have a reflective question we could sort of consider when we're looking at the differences in families. Is what family stories were you told when you were growing up? About your background and about what it is to be a part of this family, and what messages did they give you, and how did it affect your development? So routines become very important. The rituals that families have, how you celebrate Christmas or whatever holidays that you have, or celebrations like anniversaries and birthdays, all of these sort of rituals, these are the things that sort of say to children, this is who we are. And this is how we define who is part of our family, who belongs, and who's not a part of our family. So these family stories and traditions help shape family. So if we start to move into this next area of diversity in parenting, we can look at the diversity shifts that might occur between both the differences between English Canadians and French Canadians. And there was a study that found that English-speaking Montrealers encouraged their children to be more independent in solving problems than did French-speaking Montrealers. It's a simple study, but there's been many other examples where just the difference between French Canadian and English Canadian could be very different in the way they raise their children. Aboriginal families strongly emphasize the independence of all life and have strong sense of spirituality. Traditional Aboriginal societies recognize the basic family unit of parents and children living together, but family also includes a broader network of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. They have this extended family appreciation. Now, if we look at immigrant families, children in immigrant families may be pulled between two cultural ideals, with their attitudes raising concern among their family. North American society encourages independence and spontaneity, where other cultures such as Chinese or South Asian expect children to be more focused on their family and respect their elders. Immigrant parents typically hold different expectations for their children than Canadian-born parents do. Preserving cultural heritage and language and passing it on through their children is important. In comparison to Euro-American parents, Chinese parents tend to have more authoritarian parenting style, which tends to have a positive outcome for Chinese children versus the Euro-American children. One possible explanation for this is that Chinese parents are more likely to focus on negative traits. They have also emphasized that they can improve upon those traits through hard work and effort. Now, if we look at the wider circle, we can include most children have at least one sibling. In 2011, 45% of families with just one child living at home, 38% with two children, and 16% with three. Sibling relationships are similar to peer relationships in that they're more egalitarian, more balanced than those between parents and children. But unlike peer relationships, the sibling relationship is ascribed. If you recall, ascribed just really means you're born with this. You don't choose your siblings. They become part of your experience because they're born with it. That is, they're not optional. And the number of siblings, their age, their sex, all can affect the socialization of children. Significant differences between firstborn and later-born children in outcomes such as educational achievement and income. Firstborn in families is typically the advantaged position. Later-born children receive less quality time with parents. Older siblings partly replace parents in providing some of the quality time, which benefits firstborns because they have the opportunity to be teachers from an early age. Only children have many of the characteristics of firstborn siblings. Given that siblings' relationships are obligatory, brothers and sisters must learn how to resolve conflict issues. And you could probably remember, if you have a sibling, dealing with each other's boundaries was something that you had to learn to do. It can also be great warmth and affection that you have someone like a brother or a sister in your life that's there for probably someone that would be the most enduring relationship in your life. If parents treat siblings as a group, that is calling the group, the kids, children engage in more rivalry and conflict. Now, it's possible, and because of the better medical treatment and care and longer life of our citizens, more children are probably know their grandparents than they did in earlier generations because of the increased lifespan. Grandparents can reduce the impact of children on children of parents' problems, such as mental health issues or family breakups. Grandparenting styles can range from companionship with parenting, involvement with a parent-like responsibility, or it could be remoteness, which is the second, or a combination of the three styles. And so Aboriginal cultures in Canada have assigned an important role to the extended family in child rearing. The Aboriginal children are more likely to be living with a grandparent and most often, more frequently, have contact with other extended family members than non-Aboriginal cultures. Having a brother or sister with exceptionalities also affects socialization. Children must adjust to the changes in the family rhythms as parents pay special attention to the special needs child. And in some cases, some children will have to get used to or adjust to that they're not going to be as attended to as the child with exceptionalities, and sometimes can breed bad feelings towards that child. Brothers, especially sisters, may be expected to help with child care and may be asked to include the sibling in social activities. Some youngsters feel they must make up for what the sibling cannot achieve. So when we think about the larger society, we also have to think about socialization that includes childcare. Young children in full-time childcare typically spend 9 hours a day, 250 days a year away from their parents. Nearly half of Canadian children are cared for by non-relatives, and they receive informal home care, that is, babysitting out of somebody else's home. The number of children in daycare centers has increased, especially in Quebec. Children in high-quality care are readier for school and have better social skills, especially true for children with mothers of low levels of education themselves. Children from the age of 4 to 5 spend large blocks of their time at school, which takes over from much of the socialization process. Children learn to interact with new authority figures and children their own age. It's one of the first times that children start to recognize they're not the only center of the earth. There are 30 other centers of the earth as well, and it takes a while to learn how to interact and get used to that. The first school years are important for children's self-esteem. A sense of belonging is undermined by ethnic prejudice among students and school staff, whereas teacher expectation effect can have a huge impact. Teacher expectation is the impact of a teacher's expectation on a student's academic performance. Now this graph here, we're looking at the negative labels that are applied to Aboriginal people. You know, sometimes there's these stereotypes of lazy or unreliable, which of course that's not an accurate statement for any group of people. It might apply to an individual that we might know, but not to a group of people. That this label, these negative labels, mean that their school experiences may be marred by this sense of prejudice. Now, larger numbers of Aboriginal people are graduating from high school and undertaking post-secondary studies. Their rates may lag behind the general population, but it's increasing rapidly. Now, when we think of parents as being the primary agent, peers become very important. And so we have parents who have more power over the child's peers when children are young, but as children grow older, that control that parents have is less. The neighborhood that parents choose to live in and the degree to which they supervise their children helps shape a child's peer network. As children become older, the peer group assumes a greater importance. When children are rejected or ridiculed by peers, they may become isolated and antisocial. Often parents think the peer relationship as negative and blame friends for being the bad influence. But peers can make up for some of the child's negative experiences at home. When we think in terms of bigger other issues that could affect socialization, we can look at media. The media is a very important socialization agent. Television, video games, computers, and many other technologies, you know, your cell phone, handheld devices. Many young people devote more time to media than any other activity, with the exception of sleep. The explosion of social networking sites have both increased connections among people and reduced privacy. Young people are more likely to use the internet than the older people, although that's starting to change. Whether media has a good or bad influence on children depends greatly on the child's age and their family. Parents have an important role in enabling and monitoring their children's use of media. There is a digital divide, and you can put that in quotations, digital divide, as higher income families tend to have greater access to computers, internet, and that kind of technology that will advantage them, whereas lower income families have lower access. And this can make a big difference in children's experiences in school. Parents and older siblings can help youngsters learn from and about media through their explanations and comments. Unfortunately, many parents don't take the time to do this. Now, gender socialization is an important element that occurs, often done informally, but done very specifically. Parents often model traditional gender roles. When parents interact with sons, they stress achievement, independence, and cognitive aspects of their abilities. With their daughters, they emphasize interpersonal closeness through encouragement and support. You have to remember that gender is socialized. It's not born in. And so parents, society, influence what children understand to be male and what children understand what it is to be female. So that understanding of how to behave is social. It's not genetic. So objects that we surround children also affect that socialization. The kind of toys that are exposed to girls and the toys for boys often show how they're different, both in terms of color and what their activity is. Children who grow up in homes with single mothers and same-sex parents follow gender typing as much as children with parents of opposite sexes. In the past, education was very strongly related to gender stereotypes. Although attempts have been made to disintegrate subjects and encourage girls to continue in math, science, technology, and engineering into higher grades, this success, although has been limited, has still been progressive, and we see more girls going into science, technology, engineering, and math. This is also known as STEM, S-T-E-M. Now, I'll post a video for you in the same week that this video is in, showing you these interviews of young children, and so you can see how strong their understanding of gender stereotypes and their differences are. Now, if we look at by middle childhood, children tend to play in groups with their own sex. Boys and girls develop contrasting peer cultures, with boys more active in large groups and girls quieter in pairs and smaller groups. The media tend to stereotype male and female behavior in so many ways. Women, though also shown in the workplace, are more often portrayed taking care of others than are men. The other video that I'll post would be two. I'll post the Dove campaign for Real Beauty commercial that was put out, and also this little video of this girl's reaction to the toys that she finds at Toys R Us. It's kind of cute. We can also look at, in terms of family, age cohorts. And cohorts are groups of people that are roughly the same age and living in the same historical time period. Now, for example, we're going to look at boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and Generation Z. The generation known as boomers is from 1946 to 1964, and those people were born and raised in a particularly prosperous time. It was after the World War, and the benefit was the development of technology, manufacturing, and people having work, and everyone had decent incomes. And all this was good, and it continued, and it just keeps on getting better. This was also a technology boom, not in the technology that you might be thinking, but technology in terms of dishwashers, washing machines, TVs, you know, all of this technology made life possible for this baby boom period to be affluent, having cars, houses. Special protests or social protests started to occur where we were rejecting sort of family values and recreating new connections and new value-based. Parenting education was becoming more permissive, less authoritarian, and it was becoming less structured. TV played a bigger role in the boomer life. Migration was starting to happen more, from the farm to the town and from the town to the city. And then there was advances in medicine where the infant mortality rate and child mortality rates dropped. The next generation was Generation X from 1965 to 1979, and this was a smaller group than the boomers. They had more difficult financial times, and there were fewer children in families at this time. Less likely to have a traditional family, and more children were raised by single parents at this time, particularly single moms. More families moved from job to job. They were more self-employed and a little more self-reliant. Generation Y, this is the first generation to grow up with computers in their lives. They were instant messaging, cell phones became a part of their experience, and it influenced a lot of the socialization that they had. Generation Z, these were children born after 1995 and was the first generation to be born into the digital world, where all of the things that we seem to know now as important elements to our digital lives were things that they got introduced to right from day one. They are the most electronically connected generation in history. Because of age and overload of information, they tend not to be very capable of critically evaluating electronics and evaluating resources. And then lastly, just some additional issues that may occur and may be a part of people's experience is the concern is growing over the amount of control in the socialization process parents have been given up or have lost. Older children have less supervision today. Concerns over the reduction or the reduced interaction between parent and children when both parents have jobs has really impacted the overall experience of raising children. Then there's this topic that's called helicopter parents. Parents who are obsessively concerned about their child's safety and success and are, landing in their child's life, oftentimes unannounced, just to ensure everything's okay, to be there for them, to help them with everything along the way. The downside, of course, is the child doesn't learn to look after themselves. Recognition of physical and emotional abuse of children raises important issues that will be carrying on likely for some time. Well, I hope this has been helpful, looking at the topic of bringing up baby, Chapter 6, and keep up the good work and keep on going. We'll see you next week. Bye now.